I'm Myra, 30 years old, and 2 weeks ago, at my birthday, my mother gave me a birthday gift that I will remember for the rest of my life. Imagine this: 40 guests, a five-star restaurant, candles glowing on a cake. Then your mother grabs the microphone and announces you were adopted as a tax benefit, that you were never really family, that 30 years of trying to belong meant nothing. My sister burst out laughing. My father wouldn't even look at me. But what none of them knew was that I had an envelope in my purse. An envelope from my grandmother. And what was inside would make my mother run from her own party before the night was over. Before I continue, if you like stories like this, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear what happened next. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and local time in the comments. Now let me take you back 1 month earlier, to the day I got a phone call that changed everything. It was almost 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. I was still at my desk at Harrison and Cole Architecture, reviewing blueprints for a renovation project that wouldn't matter in 48 hours. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, Boston area code. I almost ignored it. These days, unknown numbers usually meant spam, but something made me answer. Miss Anderson? A man's voice, measured, professional. My name is Theodore Whitman. I was your grandmother's attorney. I straightened in my chair. Grandma Grace had passed 6 months ago. We'd had the funeral, read the will, said our goodbyes. Why was her lawyer calling now? There's a matter I need to discuss with you, he continued. In person. It concerns documents your grandmother left specifically for you. I don't understand. The estate was already settled. This is separate. He paused. Your grandmother left explicit instructions that no one else in your family should know about this conversation. She was very particular about that. My heart began to pound. Grandma Grace was the only person in my family who'd ever made me feel like I wasn't an outsider. She'd held my hand at family dinners when Patricia made her little digs. She'd whispered to me once when I was crying in her garden, "You belong here more than you know, sweetheart. One day you'll understand." I'd never understood what she meant. When can we meet? I asked. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I'll text you the address. After I hung up, I sat in my dark office for a long time. Grandma Grace had kept secrets. Secrets meant only for me. Part of me was afraid of what I'd find. A bigger part needed to know. That night, I came home to my apartment, the cramped one-bedroom I rented alone because living with family had never been an option. My phone buzzed again. The family group chat. Patricia Anderson, my mother, or rather, the woman who raised me, had sent a message. Big news. We're throwing Myra a 30th birthday dinner at the Sterling. Saturday the 15th, 7 p.m. Everyone's invited. I read it 3 times. The Sterling was one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. My parents had never, not once in 30 years, thrown me a party like that. For my 18th birthday, I got a quiet family dinner. Grocery store cake, a card with nothing written inside except "Happy Birthday." That same year, Jenna turned 15 and got a pool party with 30 friends, a DJ, and a professional photographer. I remembered sitting at my own birthday dinner, watching Patricia introduce guests. "This is Jenna, our daughter, and this is Myra." That pause, that tiny, deliberate pause before my name, I'd heard it 1,000 times. I stared at Patricia's text. Why now? Why this sudden grand gesture? Something felt wrong, like finding money on the street and knowing there had to be a catch. But maybe, whispered a hopeful voice I couldn't quite silence, maybe she's finally trying. Maybe this is different. I typed back, "Wow, thank you so much. I'm so surprised." Patricia replied immediately, "You deserve it, sweetheart." Sweetheart. She'd never called me that before. I set down my phone and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd meet with Grandma Grace's lawyer. Something told me I should know what was in those documents before I walked into any party Patricia planned. Theodore Whitman's office smelled like old leather and expensive mahogany. He was exactly what you'd expect. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of handshake that meant business. Please, sit. He placed a large envelope on the desk between us. Cream-colored, sealed with wax, stamped with Grandma Grace's initials. G.A. Your grandmother prepared this 5 years ago, he said. When she was in perfect health and of completely sound mind, she made me promise to deliver it only to you, and only after her passing. I touched the envelope. It felt heavy with secrets. What's inside? A copy of her will, a personal letter, and a smaller sealed envelope she instructed you not to open unless, in her words, absolutely necessary. He met my eyes. She said you would know when the time was right. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The will came first. I scanned the legal language until I found my name. I hereby bequeath the Anderson estate, along with all property and contents therein, to my granddaughter, Myra Anderson. I stopped breathing. The Anderson estate, Grandma Grace's mansion, the house where every holiday dinner happened, every family reunion, every important gathering. The house Patricia had decorated and maintained for 20 years, as if it were already hers. This can't be right. It's entirely legal. 3 independent attorneys witnessed the signing. Video documentation exists. But why me? Mr. Whitman handed me the letter. Perhaps this will explain. He leaned forward. The will goes public in 2 weeks. Your grandmother wanted you to have time to prepare. Prepare for what? His expression was grim. For what your family might do when they find out. I waited until midnight to read Grandma Grace's letter. My apartment was dark except for one lamp. Outside, Boston hummed with distant traffic. I unfolded the pages, her elegant handwriting, achingly familiar, and began. My dearest Myra, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And there are things I should have told you when I was alive. I wasn't brave enough then. I'm sorry. First, know this. I have loved you from the moment I first held you. Not because I had to, because you were light in a family that had forgotten how to shine. Second, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I watched Patricia diminish you year after year, and I should have fought harder. I should have said more. Third, and this is the hardest part, you are not a stranger, Myra. You are not some random child adopted for convenience. You belong to this family more deeply than anyone has told you. You are my blood, my real blood. I cannot explain everything in this letter. The small envelope contains the full truth. Documentation, proof, everything you'll need when you're ready. But open it only when you must, when you're ready to face what it means. Be brave, my darling girl. You are so much stronger than they've ever let you believe. All my love, forever, Grandma Grace. I read it again, and again. You are my blood. What did that mean? I was adopted. Patricia had made sure I never forgot it. But Grandma Grace said I belonged, said there was proof. I looked at the smaller envelope, still sealed. Only open when absolutely necessary. I locked it in my safe that night. Something in my bones told me I'd need it soon. What I didn't know then, what I wouldn't learn until much later, was that across town, Patricia was making plans of her own. I pieced the story together afterward, from what Aunt Helen told me, and what I could infer from the wreckage. Patricia was pacing her living room. Jenna sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. I found out today, Patricia said, her voice tight. About the will. Jenna looked up. What will? Your grandmother's. That woman left the estate to Myra. Patricia's hands were shaking. The entire thing, the house, the land, everything. What? Jenna dropped her phone. How is that even possible? It's legal. She did it years ago, behind everyone's back, and the will goes public in 2 weeks. But that house, Mom, you've been decorating it for years. You've been planning to... I know. Patricia's jaw tightened. Which is why we need to act now. What do you mean? Patricia stopped pacing. Her eyes went cold. The birthday party. 40 guests. Everyone who matters. Jenna frowned. I don't understand. Myra has spent 30 years trying to earn her place in this family. She's desperate to belong. Patricia smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. If we humiliate her publicly, really humiliate her, she'll be too ashamed to show her face again. And once she's gone, contesting that will become much easier. Jenna hesitated. Mom, that's kind of harsh. That house was supposed to be yours, Jenna. Are you going to let some adopted charity case take it? The hesitation faded from Jenna's face. What do you need me to do? They had no idea what Grandma Grace had left me, and they had no idea I was ready to use it. 1 week before the party, I was at Nordstrom, doing something I rarely did, spending money on myself. A dress. Something beautiful. If my family was actually throwing me a real birthday party, I wanted to feel like I deserved to be there. The emerald one, said a voice behind me. It'll bring out your eyes. I turned. Lucas Smith, my closest friend at the firm, was grinning. Are you stalking me now? Saw you through the window. You looked like you were overthinking. He tilted his head. Talk to me. So I did. I told him about the lawyer, the will, the letter. Not everything, not the part about being blood, but enough. Lucas listened without interrupting. Then he said something I'd never forget. Myra, you've walked into that family's traps your whole life. If there's even a chance this party is another one? He looked at me seriously. Don't go in empty-handed. What do you mean? Bring everything your grandmother left you, just in case. Lucas, I don't want to turn my birthday into a war. You might not have a choice. He squeezed my shoulder. Just be prepared. That's all I'm saying. That night, I laid everything out on my bed. The will, the letter, the sealed envelope I still hadn't opened. The clutch I'd bought was small, barely room for a phone and lipstick, but just big enough for the truth. I tucked the envelope inside. Just in case, I told myself. I didn't know then how right Lucas would be. I didn't know that in 7 days, I'd stand in front of 40 people, and those documents would be the only thing standing between me and complete destruction. The sterling took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across white tablecloths. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering Boston skyline. A U-shaped banquet table dominated the room, and at its center sat a chair wrapped in ribbon. My chair. 40 guests had already arrived. Relatives I saw once a year, friends of my parents, a few colleagues Patricia had insisted I invite. To make it look real, I'd later realize. Myra! Birthday girl! Patricia swept toward me in a navy dress, arms open wide. Her hug was stiff, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Thank you for all this, I said. It's a lot. You deserve it, sweetheart. That word again, sweetheart. My father, Richard, appeared next. Brief handshake, eyes that wouldn't meet mine. Happy birthday, he murmured, already retreating. Jenna didn't bother with hello. She stood in the corner, phone raised, recording, like she was documenting a zoo exhibit. Then I saw her, Aunt Helen. She'd flown in from California, which she almost never did. My father's sister. The only one who'd ever defended me when I was young. She crossed the room and wrapped me in a real embrace. Warm, protective, and she whispered something that made my blood go cold. Whatever happens tonight, remember, your grandmother would be proud of you. I pulled back. What do you mean? A server called everyone to their seats before she could answer. I sat in my ribbon-wrapped chair, clutch in my lap, scanning the faces around me. 40 witnesses. Whatever Patricia had planned, she wanted an audience. Fine. If she wanted an audience, she'd get one. The envelope pressed against my thigh like a heartbeat. Dinner was fine. Salmon, asparagus, polite conversation. I almost relaxed. Then Patricia stood. She smoothed her dress, walked to the small podium, and tapped the microphone. Conversation died instantly. Thank you all for being here tonight. Her voice was honey. We're celebrating someone very special. Our Myra is turning 30. Applause. Smiles. I gripped my napkin beneath the table. 30 years, Patricia continued. Can you believe it? It feels like yesterday that she came into our lives. Something shifted in her tone, a slight edge, barely perceptible. I've been thinking a lot lately about Myra's journey, about where she came from, about everything this family has done for her. The air in the room changed. I felt it before I understood it. We've supported her through school, through her career, through everything. Patricia's smile widened. We've loved her like she was one of us. Like. My stomach dropped. But I think. Patricia paused dramatically, scanning the room. It's time we were honest. Don't you? Murmurs rippled through the guests. Confused glances exchanged. I looked at my father. He was staring at his plate, shoulders hunched, refusing to look up. I looked at Jenna, phone raised, recording, smiling. For 30 years, Patricia announced, we've kept a secret. But secrets have a way of coming out, don't they? And I think tonight, on Myra's special day, she deserves to finally know the truth. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. Across the table, Aunt Helen half rose, face pale. Patricia! Her voice was sharp. Don't do this! Patricia ignored her completely. Myra, sweetheart. She turned to face me directly, eyes glittering. Are you ready to hear the truth? Myra isn't our biological daughter. The words hit the room like a bomb. Gasps, whispers, 40 pairs of eyes swiveled toward me. She's adopted. Patricia's voice rang with something almost like triumph. We took her in when she was 2, and do you know why? I sat frozen, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Tax benefits. Patricia actually laughed. The government had this wonderful program back then. Adopt a child, get a nice deduction. Richard and I thought, well, why not? We could use the write-off. My ears were ringing. The room blurred at the edges. Somewhere to my left, Jenna's laughter pierced the silence, sharp, cruel, echoing off the chandeliers. So there it is, Patricia continued, spreading her hands wide like a performer taking a bow. The truth. Myra was never really part of this family. She was a financial decision. She turned to me with exaggerated sympathy. I hope this doesn't upset you, sweetheart. But after 30 years of pretending, I thought you deserved honesty. I couldn't feel my hands, couldn't feel anything. 40 people stared at me, some horrified, some pitying. One woman was already whispering to her husband. My father still hadn't moved, hadn't looked up, hadn't said a single word in my defense. Jenna lowered her phone just long enough to call out, "Happy birthday, sis!" More laughter from somewhere. The silence stretched. Patricia waited. She was waiting for me to crumble, to cry, to flee in humiliation. That's what she expected. That's what she'd planned for. But then I felt it, the weight of the envelope in my clutch. Grandma Grace's words echoing in my mind. Be brave, my darling. I took a breath, and I stood up. I stood. I didn't speak immediately. I stood there, letting the silence stretch, letting 40 pairs of eyes register that I wasn't crying, wasn't running, wasn't doing any of the things Patricia had scripted in her head. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady. Thank you, Patricia, for that illuminating speech. Her smile faltered. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I looked around the room, at relatives who'd treated me like furniture for decades, at family friends who'd watched Patricia belittle me and never intervened, at my father, still refusing to raise his head, at Jenna, phone still recording. Good. Let her record everything. You're right about one thing, I said. It is time for truth. I reached into my clutch. Patricia's expression flickered. Uncertainty crept into her eyes. Myra, this really isn't the... Oh, but it is. I pulled out the envelope. Cream-colored. Grandma Grace's initials stamped in wax. You wanted to do this publicly, Patricia, before 40 witnesses, so let's do it properly. The room went absolutely still. I caught Aunt Helen's gaze. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. Your grandmother would be proud. I looked down at what I held. Everything Grandma Grace had saved for me. Everything she'd wanted me to know. For one moment, I considered putting it away, walking out, taking the high road. Then I remembered every Christmas dinner where I sat in the corner, every birthday forgotten, every time Patricia introduced Jenna first and treated me as an afterthought. 30 years of being made to feel like I didn't belong, no more. Ready, Patricia? I asked calmly. For the truth? Her face had gone white. 2 weeks ago, I began, my voice carrying across the silent room. I received a call from Theodore Whitman, an estate attorney. Some of you may know him. He handled my grandmother's affairs. Patricia went rigid. He had documents to give me. Documents my grandmother prepared 5 years ago when she was healthy and sharp and knew exactly what she was doing. I held up the envelope. This is a copy of her will, certified, witnessed by 3 independent attorneys, completely legal. Myra. Patricia's voice was strained. This isn't the place to discuss. This is exactly the place. I kept my tone calm, professional. You made it the place when you called me a tax write-off in front of everyone I know. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. So, let's talk about truth, Patricia. You seem to love truth so much. I opened the envelope. Let me share some. Jenna had lowered her phone. Her smile was gone. My father finally looked up. His face had gone gray. I pulled out the first document. Want to know what this says? Patricia's eyes were wide with something I'd never seen on her before. Fear. It says Grandma Grace left me the Anderson estate. The house, the contents, the land, everything. The room erupted in whispers. That's impossible, Patricia started. It's entirely legal. I cut her off. I can recite the exact language if you'd like, word for word. Patricia's mouth opened and closed. Nothing came out. But here's the thing. I smiled. Calm, controlled. The house isn't even the most interesting part. I watched her face drain of color. Do you want to tell them, Patricia? Or should I? Let me pause here for just a second. If you've made it this far and you want to know what else is in that envelope, tap like and drop a comment telling me what you think Grandma Grace's secret is. I read every single one, and trust me, what I'm about to reveal is wilder than anything you're guessing right now. Okay, back to the story. Patricia tried to recover. Myra, this isn't the time or place to discuss estate matters. I see. Not the time? I let out a soft laugh. You just told 40 people I was a tax deduction. You don't get to decide when it's not the time. Whispers rippled through the guests. Uncomfortable glances passed between couples. This is a family matter. Patricia stepped toward me. We should continue this privately. No. My voice didn't waver. You wanted an audience for your performance. You've got one. Patricia spun toward my father. Desperation leaked into her voice. Richard, say something. Every eye shifted to him. Richard Anderson, the man who'd been my father for 30 years without ever truly being my father, slowly raised his head. Pat, he said quietly, maybe we should let Myra finish. Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. Richard, I'm tired, Pat. His voice cracked. I've been tired for a very long time. Jenna's jaw dropped. Dad! Let her speak. The room fell silent again. I hadn't expected that. 30 years of watching my father avoid every conflict. 30 years of watching him look away while Patricia made me feel invisible. And now, finally, he was pushing back. It didn't fix anything. Not yet. But something had shifted. Patricia stood alone at the podium. No allies left. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Shall I continue? I asked. No one objected. Good. I pulled out the second document, Grandma Grace's letter. Because you haven't heard the best part yet. Patricia's face was completely white now. She knew. I could see it in her eyes. She knew what was coming. And she couldn't stop it. I held up the will so everyone could see. This is certified, notarized, legally binding, prepared 5 years ago by Theodore Whitman, Grandma Grace's personal attorney. My voice was clear and steady. I'd rehearsed this in my head 100 times since that meeting. It states that the Anderson estate, the house, the property, all its contents, passes to me, Myra Anderson. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That property has been in the family for 60 years. Grandma Grace lived there her entire married life. I looked directly at Patricia. She left it to me. Not to you, not to Jenna, to me. That's impossible, Patricia sputtered. That house was supposed to... I've maintained that property for 20 years. Maintained it? I tilted my head. Or redecorated it like it was already yours. Someone in the back stifled a laugh. The will includes a statement. I read aloud. I make this decision because Myra is the only person in this family who loved me for myself, not for what I owned. Patricia's face contorted. That senile old woman had no right to... Careful, my voice dropped. That's my grandmother you're talking about. Aunt Helen stood. The will is valid, Patricia. I witnessed it myself. More gasps, more whispers. Patricia whirled on her. You knew about this? Mother was lucid, sharper than any of us. Aunt Helen's voice was ice. She knew exactly what she was doing. I let the moment settle. Let Patricia feel the walls closing in. But here's the thing, I said slowly. The house isn't even the most interesting part. Patricia's eyes went wide. There's more? Someone whispered. Much more. I unfolded Grandma Grace's letter. My grandmother wrote this by hand, and it explains something that changes everything. The room was so quiet, I could hear the chandelier crystals tinkling. I read aloud. My dearest Myra, you are not a stranger who was adopted by chance. You are not some charitable act or tax benefit. You are my blood, my real blood. You are my granddaughter, the daughter of Marcus, my firstborn son. Chaos erupted, guests turning to each other, voices overlapping. Marcus? Who's Marcus? Patricia gripped the podium like she might collapse. That's a lie, she managed. Marcus was Richard's older brother. Aunt Helen's voice cut through the noise. He passed away when Myra was 2. Every head swiveled toward her. He struggled with addiction. Our parents disowned him, pretended he'd never existed. Aunt Helen's voice was steady but heavy with old grief. When Marcus died, Mother was devastated. He had a daughter, a 2-year-old who needed a home. She looked at me, eyes glistening. Mother begged Richard to take her in, to keep Marcus's child in the family. I could barely breathe. Richard had tears running down his face. You're my niece, Myra, Aunt Helen said softly. You always have been. I turned to Patricia. You knew. It wasn't a question. You've known the whole time. She said nothing. Her silence was admission enough. 30 years. My voice shook slightly. You made me feel like an outsider for 30 years, when I had more right to be here than you ever did. Patricia opened her mouth. But I wasn't finished. And that's still not everything. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the smaller sealed packet, the one I hadn't opened until tonight. Grandma Grace had written on it, "Only open when necessary." If this wasn't necessary, nothing would ever be. My grandmother left me one more thing, I said. She told me to open it when I truly needed it. I looked at Patricia, at her white face, her shaking hands. I think now qualifies. Patricia lunged forward. Myra, wait. Whatever's in there. We can discuss this privately. Privately? I held the packet out of her reach. Like you privately planned to humiliate me tonight? Like you privately recorded it so you could share my shame with everyone? She froze. Yes, I figured it out. I glanced at Jenna, who was frantically trying to stop her phone. The public shaming, the recording. You thought if you embarrassed me enough, I'd disappear. Then you could contest the will without a fight. Patricia's mouth worked soundlessly. How did you? It doesn't matter how. I carefully broke the seal. What matters is what's inside. I pulled out 2 items. First, a DNA test result dated 28 years ago. Second, an old photograph, faded at the edges. I studied them for a long moment. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of understanding finally clicking into place. Grandma Grace kept thorough records, I said quietly. Very thorough. I looked up at Patricia. Would you like to explain these, or should I? Her face had gone from white to green. 40 people held their breath. I finally understood why Grandma Grace had chosen me, and why Patricia had spent 30 years trying to make me feel like I didn't belong. I held up the DNA test. This was taken when I was 2 years old, when Marcus, my father, was still alive. My voice was steady now, grounded in truth. It confirms I'm his biological daughter. I studied the results again, at the detail that had made my breath catch when I first read it. But there's something else, something about Marcus himself. Patricia made a strangled sound. Marcus Anderson, I read clearly, was not biologically related to Harold Anderson, the man listed as his father. The room erupted. What does that mean? Someone called out. It means, Aunt Helen said quietly, that our mother had Marcus before she married our father. He was from a previous relationship. Harold adopted him when they wed, but Marcus was never a biological Anderson. I let that sink in. So Marcus wasn't Harold's biological son. I'm Marcus's biological daughter, which means, I paused. The Anderson family has no blood claim to my grandmother's estate. Her property came from her family, not Harold's. I held up the photograph, a faded image of a young woman holding a baby. Same eyes, same smile. You married into a family, I told Patricia, that has no connection to this inheritance. The estate belongs to Grandma Grace's bloodline. I lifted the photo higher. And that bloodline is me. Patricia swayed. You spent 30 years making me feel like I didn't belong, I said, but I'm the only one here who actually does. Someone started clapping, then another, then half the room. I didn't smile. I wasn't doing this for applause. I was doing it for truth, and the truth was finally free. Patricia attempted one final counterattack. This is ridiculous. That will can be contested. These documents could be forged. They're not forged, Aunt Helen stepped forward. I have video of Mother signing the will. I have the original DNA results in a safety deposit box. And I have 20 years of documentation of exactly how you treated Myra. Patricia whirled on Richard. Richard, are you just going to sit there? Are you going to let them attack your own wife? Every eye turned to him. Richard stood slowly. For the first time all evening, he looked his wife directly in the eye. Myra is my niece, he said quietly. My brother's daughter. She's always been family. His voice cracked. And I've spent 30 years watching you tear her down, watching you make her feel worthless. And I never stopped you. I never protected her. He turned to me. I'm sorry, Myra. I'm so deeply sorry. I nodded. I couldn't speak yet. Patricia looked around the room desperately, at guests who wouldn't meet her gaze, at Jenna crying silently in the corner, at the complete collapse of the perfect image she'd constructed over decades. This isn't over, she hissed. I'll fight this. You'll lose. My voice was calm. The will is airtight. The evidence is documented. And everyone here just heard you call your adopted niece a tax benefit. I stepped closer. You wanted to humiliate me, Patricia. You wanted to make me disappear, but all you did was show everyone exactly who you are. Patricia's face crumpled. For the first time in 30 years, she had nothing to say. I let myself breathe. The anger was still there, coiled in my chest. But I refused to become what Patricia was. I didn't want revenge. I wanted something better. I didn't come here to destroy anyone, I said. I came because I thought, maybe foolishly, that this was actually a birthday celebration. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. You tried to take something from me tonight, Patricia. My dignity, my sense of belonging. But here's what you never understood. I looked at her steadily. I don't need your permission to know my own worth. I never did. I just spent 30 years believing I did. I gathered the documents and returned them to my clutch. The estate is legally mine, but I'm not throwing anyone onto the street. That house meant something to Grandma Grace. She loved the people in it, even you, though I can't imagine why. Patricia blinked. She hadn't expected mercy. But everything changes now. My voice hardened. I will not tolerate being treated like I don't matter. Not anymore. From this moment forward, I set the boundaries. Not you. I turned to Aunt Helen. I have questions about Marcus, about Grandma Grace, about everything I was never told. She smiled through her tears. I'll tell you everything, sweetheart. I looked around the room one final time. Thank you all for coming to my birthday party. It's been educational. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. I picked up my clutch, straightened my dress, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard heels clicking. Rapid, panicked. Patricia was leaving, running from her own party, exactly like I'd said she would. I didn't watch her go. I heard it, though. The sharp click, click, click of Patricia's heels on marble, the rustle of her coat, the heavy thud of the restaurant door. She was gone. Jenna stood paralyzed for a moment, mascara streaking her cheeks. Then she grabbed her bag and ran after her mother without looking at anyone. My father approached slowly. Myra. His voice was raw. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. No. He shook his head. I need to. 30 years. 30 years I watched her do this to you, and I said nothing. I should have. He couldn't finish. You're right, I said quietly. You should have. He flinched. But you spoke tonight. That counts for something. I met his eyes. It's not enough. Not yet. But it's a start. He nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I need to go after her. Make sure she's... He trailed off. Marcus would have been proud of you, Myra. I know I have no right to say that. But he would have. Then he was gone too. The room slowly exhaled. Aunt Helen wrapped her arms around me. Your grandmother is smiling right now, she whispered. I promise you. I let myself be held. For the first time in 30 years, I cried. Not from pain, not from humiliation, from release. Someone started humming Happy Birthday. Then another voice joined. Then the whole room, soft and tentative. I laughed through my tears. Happy birthday to me. The best one I'd ever had. The party didn't end when Patricia fled. Somehow, impossibly, it actually began. People I'd barely spoken to my entire life approached me one by one. Mrs. Patterson, who'd been friends with Grandma Grace for decades, squeezed my hands tight. I always sensed something was wrong with how Pat treated you. Your grandmother talked about you constantly, you know. You were her absolute favorite. Mr. Henderson, a family friend since before I was born, shook my hand firmly. That took guts, young lady. Real guts. Lucas appeared at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. Doing okay? Honestly? I have no idea. I accepted the glass. I think I'm still processing. You were phenomenal. He clinked his glass against mine. Absolutely phenomenal. Aunt Helen pulled up a chair and began talking. About Marcus, about the brother she'd lost and the addiction that had stolen him, about his talent and his kindness and the way his face lit up whenever he held baby Myra. He wasn't perfect, she admitted. He made mistakes, but he loved you more than anything in this world. His last months, all he talked about was making sure you'd have a good life. I learned things I'd never known. That Marcus had painted, that there was a portrait of me as an infant that Grandma Grace had kept in her bedroom closet, that his addiction began after a car accident left him in constant pain. He wasn't a villain, Aunt Helen said softly. He was hurting. There's a difference. By midnight, the guests who remained were there because they wanted to be. For me. Happy birthday, Myra, someone called out. I raised my glass. You know what? It finally is. 1 week after the party, the fallout was everywhere. Patricia had vanished from her usual circles. No charity luncheons, no garden club, no carefully curated social appearances. Word had spread. Someone at the party had leaked the story, and Boston's upper-middle-class gossip network ran with it. Jenna lost over 8,000 Instagram followers in 5 days. Brands quietly distanced themselves. Turns out people don't want to buy skincare from someone who laughed at her sister's public humiliation. Then Richard called. Richard. We met at a coffee shop far from the family's usual haunts. He looked like he'd aged a decade in a week. I need to tell you about Marcus, he said. Really tell you. So he did. He told me how Marcus was the golden child once, brilliant, creative, everyone's favorite, until the accident, until the pills, until addiction swallowed everything. Our parents gave up on him, Richard said. Pretended he didn't exist. And Mom, your grandmother, never forgave them. Never forgave herself either. She couldn't have saved him. No, but she saved you. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. She made me promise to take you in, raise you as my own. And I did, but I failed at the rest. I let Patricia control everything. Let you grow up feeling unwanted. Why? Because I was a coward, his voice broke. Afraid of confrontation, afraid of Patricia, afraid of everything. I didn't forgive him that day. I wasn't ready, but I didn't walk away either. This isn't the end, I said, but it might be a start. He nodded, tears streaming. Baby steps. That's all any of us can take sometimes. I know this story is heavy. If you've ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members, if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own home, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment, share your story. I read every single one, and honestly, knowing I'm not alone in this helps more than I can say. Okay, let me tell you what happened when I finally visited the estate. 2 weeks after the party, I drove to the Anderson estate. I'd been avoiding it. Part of me wasn't ready to face the place where I'd spent so many holidays feeling invisible, the house Patricia had treated like her personal kingdom. But it was mine now. I needed to see it. Patricia and Jenna had moved out the week before, a temporary rental while they figured things out, according to Aunt Helen. They'd taken their personal belongings, but left the bones of the house intact. I walked through the quiet rooms slowly. The parlor where Patricia had hosted her parties, always positioning me in the back. The dining room where I'd sat through countless awkward holiday meals. The garden where Grandma Grace and I used to talk, while Patricia watched disapprovingly from the window. I climbed the stairs to Grandma Grace's bedroom. It still smelled like her. Lavender and old books. I sat on her bed and let the tears come. In her closet, behind winter coats and hat boxes, I found something I'd never seen. A cardboard box worn at the corners. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Marcus as a child. Marcus as a teenager with paint-stained hands. Marcus holding a newborn baby. Me. Grinning at the camera like he'd won the lottery. On the back of that last photo, in Grandma Grace's handwriting, Marcus and Myra, my two greatest loves. 1994. I pressed the photo to my chest and sobbed. I'd never seen his face until now. But looking at him, I saw myself. The same eyes, the same crooked smile. I wish I'd known you, I whispered to the empty room. The house was silent, but for the first time, It felt like home. 3 weeks after the party, my phone rang. Jenna. Every instinct screamed to let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Please don't hang up," she said immediately. "Please." I sat down. "I'm listening." "Can we meet? Somewhere neutral. I need to. I don't know. I need to talk." We met at a coffee shop on the other side of the city. Jenna looked different. Smaller somehow. No perfect makeup. No Instagram-ready outfit. Just a tired young woman in jeans and a wrinkled sweater. "I'm not here to apologize," she said immediately. "I mean, I know I should. But I'm not there yet." "Then why are you here?" She stared at her untouched latte. "I need to understand why Grandma loved you more." I blinked. "What?" "She always looked at you differently, like you were special." Jenna's voice cracked. "She never looked at me that way. Not once. Mom always said it was because you were the poor orphan and Grandma felt guilty. But that wasn't it, was it?" "No, it wasn't. You were actually her granddaughter. By blood." Jenna laughed bitterly. "And I was just the consolation prize. Jenna, Mom told me my whole life that I was the real daughter, that you were the interloper." Her eyes welled up. "But maybe I was the one who never really knew where I stood." I didn't know what to say. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I don't deserve it. But is there any chance, ever, that we could start over?" I considered the question. "The door isn't closed," I finally said, "but you're going to have to earn your way through it." She nodded. It was the beginning of something. I just didn't know what yet. 1 month after the party, I made a list. Not a revenge list, a boundary list. Patricia. No contact. Not welcome at the estate. If she wanted to communicate, it would go through attorneys. Richard. Limited contact. Open to rebuilding, but slowly. Trust would be earned, not assumed. Jenna. Wait and see. She'd shown a crack in her armor, but cracks can seal over. I'd believe real change when I saw sustained evidence. Aunt Helen. Family. Real family. The kind I'd always wanted. I began making small changes to the estate. Nothing dramatic. I wasn't trying to erase memories. But I converted Grandma Grace's bedroom into a memorial space. Her photographs, Marcus's artwork, the portrait of infant me that he'd painted before he died. A tribute to the people who'd loved me before I could remember. Then I did something bigger. I created the Marcus Anderson Memorial Scholarship Fund for kids aging out of foster care who wanted to study art or architecture. "Because your father never got a second chance," Aunt Helen said when I told her. "But maybe someone else can." Exactly. The first recipient was a 17-year-old girl named Maya. She'd been in the system since she was 9. No stable home, no family who chose her. But she could draw like nothing I'd ever seen. At the scholarship ceremony, she tugged on my sleeve. "Did you ever feel like you didn't belong anywhere?" "Every single day," I told her honestly, until I stopped waiting for permission. Permission? To belong, to matter, to take up space. I smiled at her. "You don't need anyone's permission, Maya. Neither did I. I just took 30 years to figure that out." She hugged me. It felt like hope. 6 months after the party, I held a memorial at the estate. Not a funeral, we'd already had that. This was something different. A celebration, a remembrance, a closing of chapters and opening of new ones. The guest list was intimate. Aunt Helen, Richard, who'd been slowly, painfully rebuilding himself, Lucas, Mrs. Patterson, and a few of Grandma Grace's oldest friends. And Maya, the scholarship recipient, who I'd begun mentoring. No Patricia, no Jenna, not yet, maybe not ever. I arranged photographs on the mantel. Grandma Grace on her wedding day, young and radiant. Marcus at 20, paintbrush in hand, eyes full of dreams he'd never fulfill. And the photo of him holding me, the one I'd found hidden in the closet. I spoke first. Most of my life, I didn't know who I was. I knew I was adopted. I knew I was different. I knew I didn't fit. My voice held steady. But I didn't know I had a father who loved me, a grandmother who fought for me, a history that was mine. I looked at the photographs. Grandma Grace spent her final years making sure I'd learn the truth, that I'd have tools to defend myself when the time came. She couldn't protect me while she lived, not completely, but she found a way after. I lit 2 candles, one for her, one for Marcus. I never met my father, but he's part of me. I see him every time I look in the mirror. Richard was weeping openly. Aunt Helen held my hand. To Grace, I said softly. And to Marcus. I hope you're together now. To Grace and Marcus, everyone echoed. The candles flickered like heartbeats. I smiled through my tears. The official launch of the Marcus Anderson Memorial Scholarship made the local news. The estate had been transformed for the event, not into something unrecognizable, but into something new, warm, welcoming, the kind of home Marcus might have built if he'd had the chance. A modest crowd gathered, arts education advocates, former foster youth, local journalists, and at the center, 10 young artists displayed their work, each one a scholarship recipient. I stood at the podium and looked out at faces full of hope. My father never got a second chance, I said. He struggled, and when he reached out for help, he was turned away, disowned, erased. I took a breath. I don't want any child to feel erased. I don't want any artist to believe their dreams aren't worth fighting for. I gestured toward the scholarship recipients. These young people aren't charity cases. They're not tax deductions. A knowing laugh rippled through the crowd. They're the future, and they deserve every opportunity to shine. Afterward, Maya, the first recipient, tugged my sleeve. Ms. Anderson, can I ask you something? Always. Did you ever feel like no matter what you did, people would always see you as less? I knelt to her level, every day of my life, until I learned something important. What? Their opinion of me wasn't my truth. My truth was mine to create. I smiled. And so is yours. She hugged me, quick and fierce. Thank you, she whispered, for making me feel like I matter. I hugged her back just as tightly. You do matter, Maya. You always have. The cameras flashed, but I wasn't thinking about press coverage. I was thinking about legacy and how it doesn't end. It transforms. That night, I sat alone in Grandma Grace's room. The candles from the memorial still flickered on the mantel. The photographs watched over me. Outside the window, Boston glittered against a clear winter sky. I thought about everything that had changed, what I'd lost, the fantasy of a loving family, the delusion that if I just tried hard enough, Patricia would accept me, the version of myself that bent and broke and begged to fit into a space that was never built for me. What I'd gained? Truth, identity, real connections with people who chose me, Aunt Helen, Richard in his imperfect way, friends who showed up, freedom from seeking validation I was never going to receive, and something harder to name. Peace. I looked at the photo of Marcus. I wish you could see me now, I whispered. I think you'd be proud. The candle flame danced as if in response. Grandma Grace had taught me something profound through her final gift. You can't force people to love you. You can't contort yourself into belonging somewhere that refuses to hold space for you. But you can build a life where you belong to yourself first, where your worth isn't a verdict handed down by others. That's what I'd finally done. I picked up my phone and typed a note. Things I know for certain. 1. I am worthy of love, my own first. 2. I don't need permission to belong. 3. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're self-preservation. 4. The people who matter will choose you, release the ones who don't. I saved it. Then I stood, blew out the candles, and walked toward my future. Behind me, the house settled into quiet. I was finally home. Here's what I've learned. After everything that happened, I spent a lot of time trying to understand Patricia. Not to forgive her, I'm not there and I may never be, but to make sense of it. A therapist explained it to me this way. People like Patricia don't hate you because something's wrong with you. They hate you because you represent something they can't face in themselves. Marcus was the family's shameful secret, the failure they wanted to erase. And every time Patricia looked at me, she saw him. She saw everything the Anderson name wanted to bury. Her cruelty was never really about me. It was about her own fear, fear of losing control, fear of exposure, fear of not measuring up. She managed that fear by making me small, by making me the problem instead of examining her own reflection. That doesn't excuse a single thing she did, not even close. But understanding it helped me stop blaming myself. And me? My weakness was always believing I had to earn love. I spent 30 years auditioning for acceptance, performing, bending, shrinking, trying to prove I deserved a seat at a table that was never going to welcome me. The truth is, you don't prove you're worthy of love. You simply are. If you're watching this and you're trapped in a relationship, family, romantic, friendship, where you constantly feel like you have to justify your existence, ask yourself, why am I performing? And for who? The people who genuinely love you will never make you audition for it. That's the lesson. That's what 30 years of pain finally crystallized into clarity. NCTA. Thank you for staying with me through this whole story. If any of it resonated, if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, if you've ever had to draw lines you were terrified to draw, if you've ever discovered a truth that rebuilt everything, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. I read every single one, and I promise you this, you're not alone. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe, not for the algorithm, but because if you're still here, you probably understand what it means to fight for your own worth. And I want to keep sharing stories like this with people like you. Check the description for more. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to belong. You never did. See you in the next one.